Welcome to another segment of POPA On Point. My name is Brian Moriguchi. I'm the president of the Professional Peace Officers Association. I'm joined today by Jim McDonnell, who's the Chief of Police for Long Beach Police Department. He is also a candidate for LA County Sheriff. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
We're going to do a three-part segment with Jim, focusing on what his ideas are for the LA County Sheriff's Department. He had an overwhelming lead in the primary of almost getting 50% of the vote, but he is now in a runoff with the person who came in second, Paul Tanaka. So let me start by talking about some operational or organizational issues that our members may want to know your opinion on.
Right.
And first and foremost is, you coming from the outside, are you going to bring in a bunch of LAPD people or a bunch of Long Beach people? And I tell you, we don't want to become LAPD 2, even though we have a lot of respect for LAPD.
Right.
But we want to know whether your intention is to bring in outsiders into the organization.
Yeah, and I can certainly understand that, people questioning that. I look at it, take a look at what I did when I left LAPD and went into Long Beach. In that situation, I didn't bring anybody with me. What I want to do is be able to look at the talent pool that we have within the organization. And I've known many people within the Sheriff's Department for over 3 decades now. Some tremendous talent in this organization, some experts, subject matter experts in a variety of different fields within the Sheriff's Department. So I want to be able to do an assessment on what we have available within the department, and then to be able to look and see what do we need. Is there a balance that needs to be struck? And I wouldn't preclude bringing a person or two into the organization. And I look at opportunities. We have a $3 billion budget, and that's under the direction of an assistant sheriff. I would look for opportunities to be able to get a CFO, somebody whose whole life has been dedicated to that, to be able to try and get a subject matter expert. While we're all police officers and deputy sheriffs our whole career, we aren't subject matter experts necessarily in finances or in some of the other things that maybe would be better suited to someone who has dedicated their life to a certain specialty. So I remain open in that regard to being able to get the best that we can for the organization to be able to help serve our needs. But as far as bringing in people en masse to the organization, that is not my goal at all. I have a lot of respect for the people in this organization and want to be able to use the talent that we have here as best we can.
Do you have any plans to make changes to our current, especially our executive level? Do you have plans to get rid of anybody? Maybe you don't want to say who, but do you have any plans to do that, or even restructure the department's organization chart?
Yeah, you know what, those are all opportunities to be able to take a look at restructuring, to be able to see the structure that's been in place now for many years. Does it still serve us well? Is there a better way to do business? All of those things I want to be able to get input from those within the organization, as well as to be able to look at what's being done elsewhere in the country. And certainly I realize that it's hard to compare the LA County Sheriff's Department with any other organization due to just the sheer size of it and the complexity and diversity of the organization. But at the same time, I think that it's healthy to take a look around elsewhere, see what's being done, and to be able to benefit from the experience of others. So coming in right from the beginning, I don't have any serious plans to effectively change the structure of the organization. And as far as individuals, I wouldn't specifically talk about that at this point anyway. But my goal is to be able to give everybody a fair shot and to be able to have people demonstrate what they bring to the table. I know the vast majority of people in this organization love the organization. They're dedicated and committed to the organization, and I want to be able to allow them to show what they have, to be able to step out and differentiate themselves maybe from their peers, to be able to show that they have leadership qualities and subject matter expertise that would be very valuable to the organization.
I can tell you that that response is going to be very welcoming to our membership. For many, many years, there are very talented people who were oppressed by the previous administration, so they welcome that approach. Let me talk about the undersheriff position specifically. Sheriff Baca eliminated that position following reports of misconduct by then Undersheriff Paul Tanaka. And he eliminated the position, and now they've created the executive officer position. Our perspective is that there was nothing wrong with the position of undersheriff. The problem was the person that was selected for that job, but yet the sheriff got rid of it. When you look at other departments, most I don't know of any that doesn't have an undersheriff position. Right. Would you bring back the undersheriff position?
Yeah, you know, I look at the size, the complexity and the demands placed on this organization, and I believe that the position of undersheriff is a necessary one to be able to help facilitate the daily operation of the department. So much like yourself, I don't disagree at all with the need for the position. I think what was the way it was done, not so much the way it was structured, but the way that business was being carried out previously was the problem. So you look at that position, I think it's the tone set from the top as to what the expectations of that position are. Constant feedback on how the person in that position is achieving the goals of the organization. You know, and working very closely with that person and selecting somebody who's the right fit for the person. Some of it's chemistry, some of it's do they share the same vision, values, and goals for the organization that I have, that we collectively have as an organization moving forward. Are they the right people to help restore public trust in this great organization, as well as help to inspire morale and pride within the organization, because that's a critical part of us moving forward in the best manner possible.
Is there anything that you would like to bring over into the Sheriff's Department that you plan on doing to the Sheriff's Department to make it better?
You know, I think there are opportunities to be able to look, come in, get an assessment on how things are being done here, to be able to draw on the experiences I've had both at Long Beach and LAPD, but also from exposure to other departments throughout the country. And I look at one thing that I was able to bring to Long Beach from LAPD was a review of a use of force incident within 72 hours after the incident, something that had not been done there previously. So to be able to get an assessment within a few days of an incident occurring, we have the opportunity to be able to remediate the issue, and whether it's touching on any of those fields, and to be able to move forward without having to wait 10 months to fix something that could have been fixed and maybe save a deputy's life in the meantime.
I think that's important to our members. Wanting to have something done quickly, right. Because a lot of times organizations across the United States don't respond, and so the public outcry just seems to grow and grow and grow, right. And the deputies are already labeled as having done something wrong, right. And the organization doesn't respond to argue whether they did or didn't. They're just right. Silent on it. So I'm sure they would appreciate some sort of response from the department.
Yeah, I think that touches on the whole issue of transparency, which has become a word that seems overused here recently, but I think the goal behind that is to be able to tell our story as best we can. When something happens in the field, to the degree that we're capable of sharing that information and it doesn't jeopardize anything or compromise the law, we need to tell our story and why the deputies did what they did in the field. And I think for the most part, when we remain silent on those issues, someone else will tell that story. And so it's important for us to get out as quickly as we can with the truth, with the account of what happened and why the deputies did what they did. And I think for the most part, the public supports what we're doing as law enforcement in this nation, and we need to be able to let them help us, if you will, by getting a clear and as concise as we can account of what we were faced with when we went out there in the field.
In talking about the relationship between law enforcement and the community and transparency, so the community involvement is important right. In the appearance of transparency. In light of what's happened in Ferguson, Missouri, mm-hmm. and an obvious relationship problem between the police department and the community, right. How would you develop that relationship better? I would say that Sheriff Baca did an excellent job in forming those relationships, but what are your thoughts on forming those relationships?
Yeah, you look at the county of Los Angeles, over 10 million people, probably the most diverse county in the world. We have people here literally from every corner of the globe. We have more people in LA County from 32 different countries. So when you look at what we're facing there, it's so critical that we reach out, that we have pre-existing relationships with all segments of our community, that we're sensitive to the needs of each, and there are many differences among culture, tradition, languages, and what their expectations are, and what levels of approachability they feel with their police department. So we need to be able to have those relationships with leaders in those various communities well ahead of time, so that when there's an incident, we're not introducing ourselves to them, but we have those relationships where we're able to explain what the circumstances were, and to be able to have members of that community stand with us at a press conference when we're dealing with the issue is a powerful message that we're working with the community, that we're moving forward together. If there's issues we need to deal with, that things weren't done maybe the way they could have been done, that we're there to say, hey, we're looking at it critically. If there's a problem, we're going to fix it, and we're going to work together with the community to get to where we need to get to restore that trust, to be able to establish an ongoing rapport with all of the communities within the county.
Okay. One of the other things that Sheriff Baca had were field deputy positions.
Right.
And I know that the media criticized some of the people in those positions.
Right.
But I do see some value in what their jobs were and what they've accomplished,
Right.
Which was not portrayed in the media reports.
Right.
Would you bring back those field deputies? Because right now we have,
right.
I think it's 4 positions that
right.
are unfilled. Would you bring back field deputies? And what would you have them do differently?
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't have anyone in mind certainly for those positions at this point. It's something I would want to come in and take a very good look at, but I think there's an opportunity to be able to deploy people in those positions that would be of great value to the organization. I think the key is that the individuals are accountable, that they have a mission, that they have goals, that they're supervised, and that we know what they're doing, and that at the end of the day, their efforts are in line with what the values of the organization are, the goals of the organization, and that we're comfortable that the outreach that they're doing on behalf of the department is appropriate for what our needs are.
I know Sheriff Baca had them doing specific things. Like one was legislative or endorsements,
right.
and so each had their responsibility. Would you use that structure, or do you know whether you would do that structure, or would you do it by region? Because I know some places use field deputies to cover regions as well.
Right, and I think there's an opportunity to be able to take a fresh look at that. Certainly if there's a need in the organization and somebody brings some specialized experience to the table and a level of expertise that we may not have within the organization, well then that would be a good place to be able to supplement what we have with what that person would bring. You look at the size of this county, and there's also an argument to be made for having somebody who's responsible for a particular piece of real estate within the county, because as we reach out throughout the county to be able to try and keep our finger on the pulse, we try and do that through the captains and all of our staff throughout the county, but to be able to have someone who has that 30,000-foot view, who's looking at issues differently than a captain may be in their particular area of responsibility. Not so much looking maybe at crime, but looking at relationship building, looking at an assessment of how are we perceived by this community or that community, and what do we need to be able to do to bridge that gap so that we have relationships at a level that we're proud of.
Recently, you and I were able to participate in a television show called Newsmakers, talking about civilian oversight. I felt like I was a little ganged up on because it was 3 against 1, but that's okay. We obviously had a different opinion, and you're entitled to be wrong, so I know that's going to happen every once in a while. But anyway, what's your vision on civilian oversight?
The sheriff's an elected official, so by state law and state charter, the civilian oversight body would not be, to my understanding, able to provide direction, but they certainly could provide input to the sheriff's organization, to the sheriff, as well as input and insight to the Board of Supervisors. And so in looking at the opportunity to be able to work with civilian oversight, we currently have an Inspector General. I have a vision of potentially the Inspector General working for the oversight body, and that they are not 2 different silos, but rather one combined organization. The Inspector General would be the investigative arm for the Oversight Commission, and that the Oversight Commission then would in turn report back to the Board of Supervisors. But certainly with a dotted line to the sheriff, so that we're not working in an adversarial manner, but rather trying to raise the board for everybody, so that we're being as good as we can. If they become aware of issues within the department, that they notify us of those, and that we take remedial action if appropriate in a very timely manner, rather than waiting, conducting an investigation and making it I gotcha, which is, I think, not productive for anybody. I believe that while some may say that we don't need oversight, that we can do this ourselves, I think that we're in a position right now in the history of this department where Department of Justice is looking very closely at us. I'm not sure what that is going to end up looking like, but if we can put in our own systems for civilian oversight, meaningful civilian oversight with an Inspector General, then I think that we're going down the road that we be perceived as best practices based on what DOJ has mandated in other cities and jurisdictions that they have worked with. I lived through it in LAPD with the consent decree that we had. It was onerous. It did make the organization a better organization. It was expensive. So if there's a way that we can put in place what we need to be able to satisfy what would otherwise become a consent decree and do it before there's that federal mandate, then certainly I think we're a step ahead if we can do that, to do it ourselves. But I do believe that if we don't do it, it will be done for us, and I would much rather be the one driving that or have the county be the entity driving that rather than the federal government.
And I would agree completely with that, and POPA has taken a lead in the arguments about civilian oversight for that reason. And I'll tell you what our concern is. The civilian oversight, at least how it was proposed by the Board of Supervisors, had appointments by the 5 Board of Supervisors to this commission. It had no other appointments, nothing from labor, nothing from the community. Our concern is that a civilian oversight becomes politicized, and then it just depends on whether those people like the sheriff, the Board of Supervisors, like the sheriff or don't like the sheriff, and their decisions will be made that are going to impact our membership.
Yeah, certainly that would be a concern, but I think that if there was a UCLA model that was put forward that also looked at the potential for 5 appointees, 1 from each of the members of the Board of Supervisors, but then potentially others from other stakeholders in the process, and yet to be determined who they would be, but potentially having a board as large as 9. And I think that gives us the ability to be able to draw from regionally from across the county and hopefully be able to get a board that would be representative of the population of the county as well, so that we get the insights that are so critical from our various communities to be able to help us do the job as well as we can.
What kind of power do you think that civilian oversight should have? Because most places, and I believe in the city of LA, they have quite a bit of power. They make determinations on investigations. Should a civilian oversight of the Sheriff's Department have the ability to look at personnel records and look into investigations and make determinations or provide recommendations to the sheriff? How do you see their power?
Yeah, I think by state law, because as we touched on the difference between a police department and an elected sheriff, I think they would be more in an advisory capacity both to the board and to the sheriff. So I see value in that. As far as being able to direct anything on an operational basis, I don't believe that they should or could have that power. But I do believe that there is value to being able to get input, to be able to get opinions different than our own potentially on issues that are brought before them, and to be able to have the benefit of another set of eyes, another filter beyond what we would have internally with our own systems, processes, and filters to be able to catch and remedy anything that we'd like to see be done better.
Our concern with the civilian oversight is not too different than what our concern was with the previous administration, which is a fairness issue. All the employees want is to be treated fairly and be given their side of the story to be told. And what we found in the past, that they were silenced a lot and mistreated a lot by some department executives. And so our fear is, if it's a political body, that they're gonna be the same, and that they're gonna come down hard on employees and be unfair towards them for political, expediency, I guess is how I'd put it.
I can see the concern. I think, and to touch on a piece of your previous question, I think a comparison between the LAPD Police Commission model and an oversight body with the LA County Sheriff's Department, the difference would be, by law, the Police Commission is the head of the department, and the Chief of Police is appointed at the recommendation of the Police Commission and then appointed by the mayor. And they do make decisions. They have the ultimate decision, not on discipline, but on use of force cases in particular. They are the final arbiter on that. So when looking at that difference, they would not have that role in the Sheriff's Department. We would maintain that, and then the individual officer would have certainly the right of appeal that the courts grant them. But looking at that difference, I think that's a fairly significant one that we need to look at moving forward. But I don't downplay the value of their input. And I look, as an example, the Citizens Commission on Jail Violence. By law, really, we didn't have any statutory authority to be able to demand or mandate any changes. It was input, it was observations that were then shared with the public through the Board of Supervisors. But it did have a big impact because it told the story that there was a need for reform and recommendations as to how to make the organization better. So I think the oversight body, while they may not have the ability to direct anything specifically, they have the ability to be able to shine a light on things that may need to be fixed.
And maybe that was the biggest difference between CCJV and, let's say, the OIR and Merrick Bob and other oversight that was in place.
Right.
Was it didn't have quite the platform to where the public really got to know
Right.
what those opinions are, and it didn't really force the sheriff to respond to those recommendations.
Yeah, you know, and I look at the OIR and the Office of the Special Counsel and the amount, just the sheer amount of reports over the years that were written that identified many of the same things that were brought out in the CCJV, but were accepted and filed away, but not meaningfully acted on in a way that it brought out the change necessary. So we didn't have the need for a CCJV. We didn't have the need for the reforms that we see today. There were opportunities to be able to change a number of things throughout the years, and it just wasn't done.
You mentioned reviewing of uses of force, and I think most police officers are concerned about having non-police officers
Right.
reviewing force because they don't understand the job, and what may seem offensive to the average person
Right.
who doesn't understand police work, it's difficult for us as police officers to have them, or to have them with the authority to say whether we did something right or wrong without
Right.
having been in our shoes.
Right.
How do you reconcile that?
Well, I think what you're getting is another perspective. We see that every day anyway. When there's a video in the news on a use of force, the public you know, makes their own judgments on that very quickly based on a very limited piece of video in many cases, and decides the appropriateness or inappropriateness of what the officer did in the field. I think that having a body look at it, and hopefully a body that over time will be trained and educated to know you know, what we're dealing with in the streets, as well as what we train our people to relative to use of force, what the escalation, de-escalation of force, and you know, what is in policy and out of policy, if you will, to be able to work with them on an ongoing basis. So we develop that understanding of you know, what is appropriate use of force and what is not. To be able to get to that point will probably take a little bit of a learning curve, but I think the key for us is to be able to educate, to be able to advocate when appropriate for what was done in the field. If we believe that it was in fact appropriate, then we stand up for what we believe. When we feel that it could have been done differently, to acknowledge that as well, and to consistently and continuously look for opportunities to be able to provide training, tactical debriefs, to become as good as we possibly can, so that hopefully out of each use of force we learn something and can move forward, and maybe it's we modify our tactics, we modify our training, or we look at equipment issues and needs. And we've done that a lot in Long Beach relative to what we had, what could have made it safer for the officers to be able to approach a downed suspect but still in proximity to a weapon. And we used ballistic blankets in that regard, and it was something that was costly up front, but potentially could save a life and allows the officers to get to a suspect maybe who's bleeding out, or a downed victim, to be able to safely get in and extract that person and get them medical care.
When you find, because you're going to be reviewing all these cases
Right.
yourself,
Right.
if you find that a deputy has done something correctly,
Right.
yet the media or other influences like the ACLU are coming out against us,
Right.
will you stand up and support those deputies and defend what they did if you believe that they're right?
Absolutely, and I think you look at my record both in LA and Long Beach on those issues, and you know, where we're in a position to be able to explain what was done, even when there was maybe public opinion or segments of the public who didn't believe that. Again, it's our position that we should be educating the public. We should be working with the community on an ongoing basis to be able to show what we're dealing with in the field, what tactics, what tools we're using without jeopardizing anything from an officer safety standpoint, but to be able to I guess, clarify for the public what a difficult, complex, and dangerous job this is, and what measures we use to try and avoid certainly the use of deadly force, but the use of any force at all, and to be able also to bring to light the millions of contacts we have with the public each and every year, and how few of those result in either a use of force at all, and certainly any kind of a deadly use of force.
My greatest fear is that because of public perception right now, that officers and deputy sheriffs are not going to take the appropriate action out there, and they're going to hesitate before using force because they're so afraid of being judged, and ultimately it's going to end in one of our deputies or an officer getting killed, and that's one of our greatest concerns.
Yeah, certainly we all share that.
Let me ask you about some of the new technology out there. With the perception that police officers are being overly aggressive out there, do you support, I know there was talk about us looking too much like military in our actions. Do you support a change in that? Do you think we should be, I don't know, wearing a nicer outfit when we're confronting riots, or do you think that our riot gear is appropriate? You got to be wearing protective gear.
Well, I think Ferguson brought out a national dialogue on the militarization of police, and certainly the 1099 program from the Department of Defense, where they provide equipment to police departments across the country that is surplus to them, and then the police departments deploy that in a way that hopefully is appropriate. That's not done uniformly across the country. We have in this region benefited significantly from the 1099 program. When you look at some of the vehicles that we've been able to acquire, and to be able to use those to put between a deadly threat and the officers or deputies or the community members, and to be able to save lives as a result, I think we can't downplay the fact that there is value to that program, and that it has in fact saved many lives across the country over time. I think where we see the problem is when the equipment is used inappropriately. And in Ferguson, some of the footage that was inflammatory were on what would be a skirmish line using ballistic vehicles, having officers deployed in those vehicles with rifles pointed at the crowd in a crowd control situation. Certainly I think that took a lot of people a step back and saying, you know, what are we doing, and created a conversation that maybe needs to be had. But I think that there were tactical issues. There were a lot of issues to be reviewed in the Ferguson case that could be probably representative of what might have been done in other jurisdictions across the country, and to be able to come away with a general understanding in the profession of what's an appropriate use of these types of tools and what's not. Because often, you know, we've seen it over and over again, we're our own worst enemy. And I think that tools are great, but you have to use the tools appropriately in order to be able to keep them, and in order to be able to use them as intended.
What about the use of body cameras? Or we don't even have cameras on our vehicles, which a lot of agencies do. What are your thoughts about cameras on the cars or body cameras?
Yeah, you know, I think that's the way policing is going. The expectations are now that we look for video much as we do as investigators when we go in the field. We have an incident, and the first thing we're looking at are the side of buildings to see if we have any video footage of that. The public's doing the same for any of our interactions with the community. So I think whether it's a vehicle cam or an on-body camera or both, I think deputies in the field are going to be on video, whether it's their own video or someone else's video. So that's something that in this profession we're just going to have to get used to, the fact that that's a reality of what we do. And I think that if we can have video that will provide a balance, or maybe a supplement to what might otherwise be out there, then that might be helpful in clarifying a situation, adjudicating a case or an allegation against the deputy, and overall be helpful. The dash cam provides part of the picture. The on-body camera, again, only provides part of the picture. And something as simple as, well, we put it on the chest of the deputy. As we move forward to talk to someone, we we cant our body slightly offset so that our gun is away from the suspect. That then takes the camera, the field of vision, away from the suspect and slightly to the suspect's left, generally. And so in looking at modifications like that, we need to be sure that we're deploying the cameras in a way that suits the needs that we're trying to achieve.
I believe that they now have cameras that are attached to the glasses too,
right,
that would follow the
glasses,
the view.
lapel, chest. There's a number of different variations. And looking at it, you know, without being an expert on this topic, it seems the glasses, although probably cumbersome, you know, take you where your field of vision would be, as opposed to being in a fixed position on a chest, which may or may not be facing the suspect.
The deputies overwhelmingly out in the field are doing the right thing, and we do believe, I know unions have traditionally kind of resisted
right,
anything that is like Big Brother, but I honestly believe that those cameras will show that the deputies are in fact doing their job the right way,
right,
most of the time.
Right. You know, I think we've seen Rialto is the example that's used most frequently, but in that case, complaints against officers in that city went down dramatically. And really the only difference was the deployment of cameras in the field. And I think it does change the officer's behavior, the deputy's behavior in the field, because they know that everything is being monitored. But just as much it changes the interaction with the suspect in the field, the person that you're stopping. If they know they're on camera, they're going to behave differently than they might otherwise.
We have 2 more segments that we're going to do with Jim. We're going to be talking about personnel issues, and then we'll also talk about jail issues as well. So I want to give Jim an opportunity to say a few words to our viewers and close this segment.
Thank you. Well, I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to sit down and chat with Brian and exchange some ideas and thoughts on where we're going moving forward. My goal is to be able to make all of you as proud as you were of that badge that you wear and all that it symbolizes. What a tremendous asset the LA County Sheriff's Department is to this whole region and this whole nation. And I know all of you work very hard every day, and my goal is to be able to shine the spotlight on the good work being done, and if there's things we need to fix, then we'll fix them. But we'll move ahead together and once again show the rest of the nation, for certainly the policing community, that the LA County Sheriff's Department is the place to look for best practices. Thank you.
There's a reason why an overwhelming majority of law enforcement officers, including those within the Sheriff's Department, are supporting Jim McDonnell for sheriff. He's the right candidate, and we appreciate him taking the time to be with us today to express his opinions. Thank you for another segment of POPA On Point. Learn more about us by visiting our website at www.ppoa.com. You can contact us via email at info@ppoa.com or by phone 323-261-3010. You can also connect with us through our Facebook page by searching LA County PPOA or follow us on Twitter @LAPPOA.